How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. I'm David Clark, and this is my old sled. This is actually my new old sled. I still have my old sled, and for those of you that have been asking, I'm probably going to keep it for a while. You know, one of the things that I'm really pleased about with this channel is the amount of discussion that we have. So the questions and the comments that you guys post. Because at the end of the day, YouTube's a community, or it should be. Now, what I'm going to do in today's video, I'm actually going to respond to one of those comments. I try to respond to all of your comments in the comment field. I'm not so great in the summer, I know that, but you know, during the season when I'm posting regularly and you guys are commenting, I try and make the time to respond to you. Now, once in a while I get a really good comment and, you know, I don't just want to respond in the comments, it also gives me an idea for a video. And that's what I'm doing in this one. So I got a comment recently from Joe Nault. Joe's been a subscriber for a long time. You know, he's a regular contributor in the comment section. You know, Joe made a comment in one of my previous videos about something that I was doing. And at the time, I didn't really think that much about it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yeah, if you do what I'm doing in the video and you're not careful, you could actually do some damage to your sled, and I would hate for that to happen. So we're going to talk about that in 2 minutes, so stick around. Alright guys, this is the channel where we talk about all things snowmobiling, especially older sleds like my classic 97 MXZ 670 to this 2005 Rev. So take a second, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post a new video. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, Joe Nault left a comment on one of my previous videos. So it was a preseason maintenance video and I was talking about using one of these things. This is a power washer. So where I ride, they use a combination of sand and salt on the roads, and that really accumulates on certain parts of the sled. So part of my maintenance routine, I use this to knock some of that loose debris off the sled. Now, Joe's absolutely right. There's certain parts of your sled you want to be really careful of with a power washer. Now, there's different power washers. This one is an electric one. It puts out 1800 PSI. I have another one. It's a gas-powered one. It puts out 3000 PSI. You can do a lot of damage with 3000 PSI. So this is the only one I use on my sled, and I still use it carefully. You know, there's a few key areas that I find sort of that bigger debris like road salt and sand and gravel can accumulate, and if you leave it on the sled over time, you know, it basically works like sandpaper and it can cause wear. So I want to knock that dirt off of the sled, and some of the areas are really hard to get to just with a cloth and soap and water. So in the steering components around the ski, you know, kind of up in this area, you know, in the back of the sled, obviously along the running boards, you're going to get gravel off your boots, you know, underneath in the rear suspension, around the track and the sliders, in behind the idler wheels, and these are all spots that are really hard to get to just with a brush or a cloth and water and soap. You know, Joe makes a really good point. You can do a lot of damage with a power washer. And I remember my first motorcycle, actually, I was washing it with a power washer, and I got a little too close to the windshield and ended up stripping some of the decals off, which really kind of sucked with a brand new bike. Now, one of the things that I should point out is what I'm doing in that video, I'm going over those areas fairly quickly with the power washer to knock that loose debris and dirt off, right? So there's a couple of key areas you want to be really careful of. You know, to Joe's point, anything that's greased like a bearing, if you get that power washer in too close, not only are you going to strip the grease away, and by the way, after I clean my sled, I always make sure I re-grease those components, but you know, you don't even want to get that close that you're actually stripping that grease out of them. So, you know, if you think of those ball joints in your steering, I mean, most of them, they're out and exposed to the elements, they're going to get wet, but with the power washer, you can force that water right into those bearings, and you don't want to do that. You know, even on my older sled, this old swing arm type suspension, you know, there's a lot of places for dirt and grit to get trapped. At the front, where the steerage linkages meet this trailing arm, I'll sort of blast from above, blow the loose stuff off. I make sure I keep the fan this way, and I don't put it sideways and blast right into this linkage. And then when I'm finished, I make sure that everything is dried and re-greased, and then hit with an anti-corrosive lubricant or a rust check. You know, likewise in the back of your machine, right? If you want to go over, back and forth quickly, knock that loose stuff off the running boards, off the track and the high facts, off your mud flap at the back. Just be really careful in and around those idler wheels. So especially if you don't have those covers, the hubcaps that cover the idler wheel bearing. So this machine has them. I did another video on installing them on my 97. You know, those are going to protect the bearing not just from dirt, but they're also going to protect it if you're using your power washer. But especially if you don't have those caps, be really careful about putting the nozzle of your power washer right up against those idler wheels, because you don't want to force water into those bearings. You know, under the hood is another area that you want to be super careful with. If you think about your electronics and your ignition components, you know, most of them are going to be well shielded from the weather, but they're not really going to do a great job against a high pressure stream of water. The other thing that's a good idea, if you've got a unit like this one that has these adjustable nozzles, make sure you're using a tip that fans that spray out as opposed to sort of a narrow stream that can get into those bearings. The other thing you want to be super careful with, and I actually wouldn't be surprised to see these pulled off the consumer market eventually, are these 0-degree nozzles. So these ones don't fan the spray out at all. It's just a narrow, concentrated stream of high-pressure water. So obviously you can do a lot more damage to your sled, but you're seeing a lot of people get injured with these as well. Okay, so Joe, thanks so much for taking the time to point that out. I think that's a great point, and it's something that can save people headaches down the road. So definitely, I think it's important to keep your sled clean as well as maintained if you want it to last. But yeah, absolutely. If you're going to use a power washer, really be careful, particularly around those components in your steering or your rear suspension that have bearings in them or grease on them. You want to be really, really careful with the power washer. All right, guys, so I think that's it for this video. If you found that informative, useful, or entertaining, take a second and click that thumbs up. Until next time, I'm David Clark. Thanks for taking the time to watch. So this is the channel where we talk about all things snowmobiling. So especially if you're new to the what's a smart? Sand and road salt, and that accumulates on the sled over the winter. So one of the things that I do when I'm maintaining my the back of the sled, obviously on the running boards, you get gravel off your dirt. Gravel off your dirt. You know, so one of the things that I'll point out is that what I'm doing in that video, I am quickly going over these. Ouch. So one of the things, you know, sorry to talk when you talk. You know,